Gentlemen, it's time for some metadata. Nice. Oh my days. Now, to give you guys a little reminder of how this data works, this data is put together by JCMS, who runs the Meta Monday website. You should definitely go and check that out. If you like this kind of data and you like this kind of breakdown of 40k, he does have a Patreon. Please consider signing up and supporting the guy, because he does do a good job it's a very valuable resource, Meta Monday. So big thank you to him for that. Now how it works is we look at each individual faction, and we also look at what detachments they've got inside that faction. And we look at their average win rate, and then we break it down and look at the individual win rates for each one of their detachments. 506 players is actually what I would call a quiet week. It's not a super quiet week. It's just at the top end of a quiet week, the bottom end of a normal week. 40k tends to have between 600 and 700 people each week playing it competitively. That's the average. If you get above 700, get above 800, it tends to be more of quite a busy weekend. If you get above 1,000 players, it tends to be a very, very busy weekend. If you get below 500 players, it tends to be a pretty quiet weekend. But with 506 players and 12 events, that's a pretty good spread. Now, bottom place, they have returned to the shadows, and it seems like their codex release has done them more harm than good. It is the Gene Stealer Cult. This is really sad to see. I know it's a quiet week, but seeing a codex faction, even a niche codex faction like GSC, with only 8 players, this really points to a dead faction competitively. Now, Gene Stealer Cult have been breathing their last breaths for a while now, and I wish I could say I was surprised. I'm not. The perception of GSC is that they are very flavorful, but not very powerful. Now, I'm going to say something kind of controversial here. I don't think GSC are as bad as everyone's making out. I know that everyone likes to think of them as the new Deathwatch, the new Admech, the new Dead faction. But I used Brood Brother auxiliaries, and I was staggered by the amount of firepower they could put out. Staggered, I say. Combining guard firepower with Gene Stealer Cult firepower was very, very interesting. And I actually did a battle report, and yes, it was a narrative battle report, and yes, it wasn't the most competitive armies, but my list I was using was heavily toned down. Simon's was heavily toned down, and I can't help but thinking there was definitely something there if we were both bringing quite cutthroat armies. Now that's sort of a little personal observation there. Looking specifically at the data for the GSC, they've got a 35% win rate at the moment. That is very, very low. It's been a while since we've seen a faction clock in at 35% on average. They did have one person who was able to go undefeated, so well done to them, or 4-1 at most. I think they actually did win a tournament. So yeah, one person went for at least X and 1. It turns out they actually won a tournament. So GSC winning a tournament, but they only had 8 players, and those 8 players were only able to win 14 games. And bear in mind that one of those players won 5 of the games. It means the other remaining players won 9 games between them, which is oof. Now, Outlander Claw seems to have had some good success, but it's interesting, one guy went 5-0, and then Bob Lowe, who's in chat right now, part of the MG community, he went 0-5. So I think one of the big things with GSC is it's so swingy on the results. Like, some people are doing really, really, really well with them, and some people are really struggling with them. And I think it just comes down to that age-old problem I say age-old, that problem with GSC in all of 10th edition. Do you roll good on 4-ups or 5-ups for Cult Ambush? Do you roll Cult Ambush good? Yeah, you might have a good run. You don't? Well, then you're fucked. Now, Outlander Claw seems to be the one that's doing a lot of good work this week, although it is a small sample size. Host of Ascension, someone was able to go 2-5 with them, but again, only one player. Biosandic Brood Surge, the most popular this week, but only a 33% win rate, with only those 3 players able to get 5 wins between them. Brood Brothers looking absolutely shite, but I think there's more to that than meets the eye. And then Xenocreed Congregation, which I think fairly consistently has been doing quite badly. But long story short, GSC is looking quite bad. And unfortunately, whilst the codex seems very flavorful, competitively, it seems DOA. Next, we've got Space Marines, Jimmy Space and his Marines coming in with a pretty dire 38% win rate. The Space Marine win rate is always a bit fucked, right? And the reason it's a bit fucked is because you have people who basically take their Space Marines, maybe their Ultramarines or their Imperial Fists, and they'll just run them as a different... They won't run them as Space Marines. They'll run them as one of the Codex Divergent chapters. If that Codex Divergent chapter is simply better. So the problem that you have with the Space Marine data is, whilst they've got a 38% win rate, honestly, and I don't mean to rag on those people that do play regular Space Marines, all of the quote-unquote best Space Marine players, all the people that want to run Space Marines and actually run them competitively, aren't running base Codex Space Marines. If you're running basic Space Marines, literally just run them as Dark Angels in Gladius Detachment, and you'll just have a better win rate. It's that simple. There are other Codex Diversion chapters as well, but really, unless you're doing that, you're just willfully holding yourself back, which is fine. A lot of people do impose limitations on themselves. They run meme lists or fun lists, or they're just like, I'm an Ultramarine player, so I'm going to play Ultramarines. Like, that's totally fine. But either you're putting a limitation on yourself, or you're not aware of the advantages the Codex Diversion chapters have, basically for doing everything that Space Marines do, but better. Anvil Siegeforge guys, they actually went between them 6 games out of 10, so that's pretty good. So that's 60%. Gladius Task Force, by far the most popular, but for the second week in a row, really, really low win rate. One guy was able to go 4-1, but really, if you're running Gladius and you're running Space Marines, you should be running it as Dark Angels. And I can't help but feel like this represents a whole bunch of people who have heard Gladius is good, but haven't done the homework and don't realize that it's not basic Space Marine Gladius which is good, it's the Codex Divergent ones. Ironstorm seems to have almost completely died for regular Space Marines with 35% win rate. Who would have ever thought we'd see Ironstorm at 35%, man? Not me. Firestorm Assault, there was one dude who apparently got quite badly filled in. And it turns out that Stormlands guy was taking a week off because we had no basic Space Wolf, no base Space Marine players running Stormlands this weekend. So Stormlands guy, I hope you're doing all right, buddy. Now, for those that don't get the joke, pretty much every single week, but there are exceptions like this week, pretty much every single week, there's one guy that appears in this data running Space Marines as Stormlands. And you should only ever really run Stormlands if you're a Space Wolf. And so we like to call that guy Stormlands guy, because he's a goddamn hero. He's not the hero we want. He's the hero we need. He's the hero we want and the hero we need. Oh, GW, you went too far, man. Orcs are not having a good time right now. Orcs are really not having a good time right now. Not only has their faction been nerfed into the ground, not only are they now in the bottom 3, not only has their win rate plummeted, not only have they had their chance of snatching the crown and becoming the meta inheritors taken away from them, but they've also had their final hopes dashed. Because last week, Orcs won the largest tournament of the weekend, the Tacoma Open, and everyone felt reinvigorated. People thought that Orcs would turn the franchise around. Turns out the guy that won Tacoma Open with Orcs cheated quite badly, and multiple times. Not only have the Orcs had that victory, that bragging rights taken away from them, not only had that hope removed, but now they also have a bit of a black mark against them. And I know that guy doesn't represent the Orc community. I know. Don't worry, guys. I know, and I won't hold it against you. But I know that a lot of Orc players right now probably can't help but feel like they're having a bad time. It's talking of Orc-specific data. 40% win rate with only 10 players. Only seeing 10 Orc players is quite sad, considering that their codex is pretty recent. Seems like Orcs and GTL Cult will be sharing a grave soon. Am I saying that Orcs are DOA? Maybe that's a bold take. Maybe that's a hot take. But it is a take that I'm going to leave hanging, an insinuation. I implied it. It's the implication. I'm going to leave that implication hanging in the air like a fart in an elevator. I think Orcs are now a dead faction. With player numbers like that, win rates like that, I don't think they're dead. I think they're dying. And until GW gives them a shot in the arm, this franchise ain't going to be. They're not going to turn this franchise around. What do we have here? What a reversal of fortunes. We have Blood Angels coming down here at 41% win rate. Now, frankly, this is a blip. With quiet weeks, you get some weird, like, anomalous results. And this is kind of a weird anomalous result. There's also a couple of other things going on here. So right now, Blood Angels are one of the strongest factions, and they don't belong in the bottom. They're not the fourth worst faction. They're not really bottom four. There are two things that are happening right now. One, it's a quiet week, and you always find on quiet weeks you get some weird, wacky results. There's always one or two of them floating around. Secondly, Blood Angels are really good right now. People know Blood Angels are really good right now. A lot of people are jumping on Blood Angels right now, and so as a result, they're getting the guard effect. I like the guard effect is when everyone starts finding out a faction's good. A bunch of people get a net list, maybe play one practice game, if any practice games, take that list to a tournament and get filled in. Because they just thought that the faction would be an auto win. And so the win rate, the player numbers go up, but the win rate goes down, and then eventually we come to the bottom of the curve, things start going up again. Right now, I would say that Blood Angels it's a bit of an anomalous result, and also it's probably a fact that a lot of people are jumping on the faction. The next faction in the bottom 5 is the Tau. Ha! Couldn't have happened to a nicer faction. Now, I know that this is a blip, and you guys know that this is a blip. But, you know what? It is a blip that I am going to embrace until next week, when inevitably Tau are... I wonder if this is a mistake, or I wonder if this is quite an on-the-nose joke from JCMS Meta Monday, because Tau players have got a reputation for cheating, and the Orc guy at Tacoma cheated this week. So I think it's quite funny if he's put this in here to be like as a little nod to the Orc cheater guy. I fucking JCMS, if that's intentional, I applaud you, sir. I applaud you. And if it's a happy accident, then I'll still give you credit for it, man. Brilliant. We've got 44% win rate overall. 4 people actually went at least 4-1, X-1, and 1 person actually won a tournament. So 44% win rate, but they won a tournament, and they had really good play numbers. I never thought I would see the day when there would be over 3 times the number of Tau players and Orc players. But that gives you an idea of where this faction is right now. A lot of people are picking up on a quiet weekend, that many Tau players. A lot of people are picking up on Tau being good right now. And I think they're definitely suffering a little bit of a... Loads of people jumping on the faction, it's going to go down, and then it'll probably start going up again. I think they're definitely suffering that slightly. Now, Monka doing well this week with a 51% win rate and 11 players. Kayun for what must be third or fourth week since the third or fourth time. Consistently Kayun having a higher win rate, and someone actually would have torn with it. So it turns out that stained hits are better than lethal hits. Who would have fucking thought, man? But I suspect it's because Tau players are basically they like Kaoyon to avoid basically throwing away their first turn if they go first. If you go Monka, you really want to go second basically every time, because you want your opponent to move out and then you want to fuck them. Kaoyon, how you say it. 8 players, 52% win rate, and someone won an event with them. What event did they win? That's the biggie. Okay, so 24 player, 5 round GT, WTC scoring in Ireland, and they went 4-0-1. So they won with a draw. So fair enough. So they still won, but it was a nice sort of smaller event. But still, a win's a win, baby. Getting a tournament win's a big deal. Now, what's interesting here is the complete fucking drop-off of Retaliation Cadre. Retaliation Cadre, like, it's just up and down, like, constantly. It's like a seismograph. Every week, it has, like, a bit of a its win rate varies a lot. And yet, it still consistently every week has someone going, like, 4-1 or better with it. And it has really, it's actually the most popular detachment. Retaliation Cadre, it either wins big or it loses big. And this week it lost big, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that back on top. Crew Hunting Pack, DOA, man. Like, removing the reinforcement stratagem for it basically killed it. Moving on, we have Chaos Demons. Demons save! 46% win rate puts them into the Goldilocks zone. Chaos Demons are a bit of an up-and-coming faction. You can see that they had 3 people that were able to go a 4-1 at least. And they had 27 players. Really good number of players. We're starting to see more people jump on the mono corn. So at the beginning of the edition, it was all about Dat Monster Mash. And it was all about Dat Be'lakor. Then Chaos Demons evolved. And it was all about Dat Monster Mash, but then Great and Clean Ones became the next big hot thing. And then, with the recent changes, Be'lakor is out and Bloodthirsters are in, but it's not complete Monster Mash. We're seeing like 3 or 4 like Bloodthirsters and like Scarborough and stuff like that. And then we're seeing Demon players taking a lot more of the little shit. And we're not just seeing that with like the one tournament that I went to. We're seeing that pop up with other lists and other results. So it seems like Khorne is on the warpath. And that traditional 10th edition Monster Mash style list still work. But Mono Khorne is in the ascendancy right now. And it's not surprising when you've got Bloodletters, which can kill anything. And you've got big demons like Bloodthirsters, allowing Bloodletters to get like 6-inch charges and everything. Which, you know, if your faction is about charge, if demons are basically a combat army, it kind of makes sense that the combat ones, which now have a really short charge, are doing the best, right? It's not complicated. It just kind of makes sense. But yeah, Chaos Demons, a little bit of a lower week for them, but nothing that faction needs to worry about. They're still in the Goldilocks zone, and they've clearly still got a lot of potential. Tyranids! Tyranids still finding themselves in the bottom 10, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, so the bottom 7th bottom faction. Tyranids still finds themselves in the bottom 10. I imagine it's a little frustrating for that faction. Overall, Tyranids seem to be settling into that traditional position that Guard were in, 45 to 48% win rate. Now, that's not great, but it's a fucking country mile. It is so far beyond where they were before this recent balance patch. Tyranids were slipping, dangerously at risk of slipping into a 30% win rate, I should say. Now them being closer to 50%, fairly well established into the Goldilocks zone. Tyranids seem like they're in a better position right now. They still seem to be having troubles winning tournaments. Tyranids can win games. We had 6 people. That's almost 16% of the players in this faction going 4-1. So we had a lot of people win a lot of games, but they just don't seem to be able to clinch the deal. So a lot of 4-1s, but not many 5-0s. Now, in terms of what seems like the top detachment, Vanguard, Onslaught, and Invasion Fleet have come in and have settled as probably the best detachments right now for the everyman on the street. Invasion Fleet continues to be the comfy pair of slippers that Tyranid players know they can go 2 and 3, 3 and 2 with, but a skilled Tyranid player with a little bit of piss and vinegar and a little bit of brains behind them can actually do better with Vanguard Onslaught. 4 people. There was a very similar number of players running Vanguard and Invasion Fleet, and yet 0% of people, and they had a very similar win rate, 46% and 48%, so similar player numbers, similar win rate, but 0 people managed to go 4-1 or better with Invasion, and 4 people, 2/3 of the Tyranid players who did this weekend, went 4-1 with Vanguard Onslaught. So basically it continues to be safe. Vanguard Onslaught is the Tyranid Meta Chaser detachment now. Synaptic Nexus. Having a lot of people talk a lot of good shit about Synaptic Nexus, but we're not seeing it. We're not seeing it fully break out into the meta yet. There's always a few players. There's always a little bit of a, you know, if someone gets cheeky, sort of form one with it. We're not seeing it break out of them into the meta yet. Crush of Stampede, I firmly believe this is an anomaly because it is generally quite shit. It's better with the balance patch, but and clearly a few people are trying it. But I personally remain to be convinced about Crush of Stampede. I think it's got better, but it's not got good. Next we have the Leagues of Cheese, the Leagues of Votann. So a second middling week for Votann. So I don't think it's a second week in a row, but it's certainly the second week of this happening in July, where they've had a bit of a blip. So for the longest time, Votann were kind of up there as a bit of an anti-meta faction, good into things like Catan. And since, but in the last month, since the balance patch, there's been a few wobbles. What was previously a very, very steady ship. Now, Votann started off really shit, then they got an overhaul, then they just, and then Necron's work became very relevant, and Votann became a very, very steady forming faction. This is the second time where, relatively, we've seen them dip down for a week. It happening once is an anomaly. Happening twice in a month, that is a monitor situation. I think going forward, I don't think Votann are in trouble, but something is happening. The equation isn't balanced right now, and this is the second time in a month when they've had a result, which I know that this community is not going to be happy with. Perhaps it's a little bit of fatigue, perhaps it's just a quiet week. We'll see. Next we have everyone's favorite golden banana, boys and girls. It is the Adeptus Custodes. Yes. Alright, so but Adeptus Custodes here, 49% win rate. It might seem like they're in the bottom 10, but that does put them in the Goldilocks zone. There's just so many factions which are getting into that Goldilocks zone now. GW's doing a very good job of balancing things. So 49% win rate. Now, Al Coffin said that most players are going 3-2, 2-3, and that's absolutely reflected in the data because we had 17 players, but only one person going 4-1. So I think what this really shows here, and pretty much everyone is running Shield Host, which makes sense because it is easily the best take all comers detachment. I think Custodes right now, what this represents is the Custodes players, not the people getting their Custodes army off the shelf and running it because they happen to be meta right now. This represents the Custodes community. This represents the results that the everyman on the street is getting, and this represents where the faction is really in the pecking order. And 49% win rate is nothing to be ashamed of. 49% win rate is overall very respectable. Bit of a surprise. Next, we've got the World Eaters. It's rare to see the World Eaters this low down these days. But they're not really low down. Here's the thing. Like Custodes, they have a 49% win rate. That's a very, very good win rate, man. That's really good. God, I mean, if you travel back in time and went to the Imperial Guard community about a year into 9th and said, what would you do for a 49% win rate? Universally, every single one of those Guard players would, without even saying a word, would basically, under your belt, whip your pants off and start preemptively sucking your dick. That having a 49% win rate is, in the grand scheme of things, both this edition and historically, is not bad at all. So I don't want anyone getting the wrong end of the stick. Now, World Eaters had 19 players, which is in line with Custodies, but you can see that there's a little bit of... you can see there's a little bit more play in the World Eaters. Whereas occasionally someone's sort of going 4-1 with Custodies, we actually have 3 times the number of players going 4-1 with World Eaters. Now, this week, World Eaters didn't win any tournaments, but they have been winning a couple of tournaments here and there over the last month or so. And this week, it seems that World Eaters have maybe regressed slightly. This looks like a very quintessentially 10th edition World Eater stat line. An okay win rate, a whole bunch of people going 4-1, but no one quite managing to win the tournament. So this is almost like a step backwards to the World Eaters, but I wouldn't be surprised if next week we see that win rate back up again on a busier week, and we see the tournament wins starting to flow in. Is there any point even talking about this? Deathwatch had 2 players. Between them, those 2 players. Deathwatch had 2 players. One guy went 4-1. One guy went 1-4. 2 players. Wildly varying results. Dead faction. Dead faction. Imperial agents cannot come quick enough. It's just that simple. Okay, let's cover Death Guard, and then how far will we? That'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We'll cover Death Guard and Imperial Knights, and then we will catch up on the super chats. We've had a super chat come in from Talzun, and we've seen Q-Tut, and we've got one from Richard Baker. So thank you to all of you guys. And I will get to all of you after these next 2 factions, which I'll cover in about 2 minutes for each one. So, Death Guard. Little bit of a resurgence. So, Death Guard have been a mid 40% win rate faction. Like 45, 46%. You know, they've been, sometimes they've crept at sort of 48%. They've been a mid 40% win rate faction for a while, and that's been a good position for them to be in. It's been a comfy position for them to be in. It's a position that they know well. It's been like the missionary position for them. You know, it's not gonna blow any minds, but it's gonna get the job done. Now, right now, this week they've had a bit of an upsell. They've maybe switched it around a bit. Maybe we've gone for a little bit of doggy style, and they've managed to go for a 51% win rate. And they've had 5 players, which is nearly, correct me wrong, is more than 25% of the players they had this week go 4-1. Now, no one won any tournaments, but there were more Death Guard players than there were Custodies players. There were as many Death Guard players as there were World Eater players. They had a higher win rate. They had a significantly higher proportion of people than both those other mentioned factions go 4-1 now, but no one won a tournament. I think the Death Guard community is starting to unlock their new meta. The longest time, it was Mortarion and 3 Plagueburst Crawlers. That went away with the last balance patch. Death Guard have been trying all sorts of weird, wacky, inflatable, flailing arm tube men, and trying all sorts of different strategies. And now I think things are starting to coalesce. And I think I've heard some rumblings, and I've heard some information from you guys in the community saying that Death Shroud with Terminators, with Librarians Terminator armor, are very, very difficult to shift with great damage output. And maybe we're starting to see people con onto that, and we're starting to see them coalesce around their new favorite build. I have to say, I always thought the Mortarion Plagueburst Crawler strategy was a bit overcooked, a bit overhyped, and I really, really like the idea of Death Shroud getting their time in the sun, because they're a very, very cool Death Guard unit, and they're a really, really cool Terminator unit. But I still hold out hope for my beloveds. I still hold out hope that the, not Death Shroud, but The Chad Lord Terminators, the Blight Lord Terminators get their time in the sun. Because I don't know what it is. I just prefer Blight Lords over Death Shrouds. It's just a personal thing. But right now, Blight Lords are really kind of like Shite Lords. And I hope that they do get their time in the sun. But it seems like Death Shrouds are the new meta. And it's starting to pay off. It's starting to get some results to Death Guard. And then we have Imperial Knights. That's not the right line. Imperial Knights. Really, really healthy player numbers for Imperial Knights. 51% win rate. Reclaiming some of that lost glory from the start of 10th edition. Love to see it. And even having 5 people going 4-1. But look at that. 5 people went 4-1. That's the same as Death Guard. And yet Imperial Knights had basically a third extra players. They had an additional 10 players over the Death Guard. That gives you an idea of how well Death Guard did this week. Now, Imperial Knights going 4-1. Imperial Knights having a 50% win rate. Imperial Knights having good player numbers. I said it last week. I'm going to say it again this week. This is all indications of the 40k meta healing. Nature is healing. And Imperial Knights, in my humble opinion, are returning to their spawning pools. They're returning to their breeding grounds. They're returning to their place of origin as the gatekeeper of competitive play. Imperial Knights seem to have settled into a position where you can take to a tournament. You'll always come away with a couple of wins, or maybe even 3 and 2 wins under your belt. But you're never going to win a tournament with them outside of the occasional very, very lucky run or exceptional circumstances. For a lot of people, being able to turn up to a tournament with like 5 or 6 models, depending on how many like Helens you're taking, being able to turn up with a handful of models, which are super easy to move around and play, super easy to pilot, and to come away with a few wins under your belt, whilst having a bit of a social, having a few beers, is a very, very attractive prospect. And I think that's why we're seeing so many people pick up the Knights again. They are the gatekeepers. People can use them for a good weekend of gaming, and they can come away and get themselves pretty much some guaranteed victory chicken, which is nice. Sister Battle, 51% win rate. 5 players going at least 4-1. 1 person actually winning a tournament. 25 players. So that's actually a pretty respectable amount of Sister Battle play, considering traditionally they've been quite a niche faction. It seems like Sisters are starting to break out into the mainstream a little bit. Now, when I say there's 25 Sister players, what I mean to say is basically it's not really Sister Battle, it's Bringers of the Flame. Although Hallowed Martyrs had a good week, an army of but there's only 3 people playing it. Armies of Faith did okay, and we saw 2 people go 4-1 with it, and 20 people run it. So Bringers of the Flame remains the most popular and the most consistently performing. What's interesting is that Penitent Host technically had an 100% win rate this week, but it's only 1 player, so it's kind of hard to judge that. But the tournament win did not come from Bringers of the Flame. It came from Hallowed Martyrs. Let's have a look here. There you go. So 34 player, 5 rounds American tournament. Sisters with Hallowed. Interesting. Well done to that guy for going 5-0. Or girl for going 5-0, because it's Sister Battle after all. And interesting to see something other than Bringers of the Flame doing well. What will be really interesting to see is if we see a whole bunch of people jump on Hallowed Martyrs in the wake of that result. Necrons coming in here. Necrons continuing to have decent player numbers. I mean, okay. That's a very, very, very low number of players for Necrons, but for a normal faction, it's okay. Vast majority of people are still on that Hypercrypt Legion, although week in, week out, we are seeing Awakened Dynasty. It's getting some results, man. It's getting some results. One guy, there were 3 people that ran Awakened Dynasty. One guy actually won a tournament with it. And he won a 25 player tournament, and he went 5-0, beating out Guard, Chaos Demons, Admech, and Guard again for the top spot. So I tell you, man, I think after playing against Simon's Awakened Dynasty, I think there is some real potential from this attachment. I think probably taking Silver Tide, I'm not sure if that works, because I was able to blast through a lot of those warriors fairly quickly. But I have to admit, I am very Awakened Dynasty curious, and this is, God knows, the Pharaoh only knows how many weeks this is in a row. Probably 5. But for 5 weeks in a row, Awakened Dynasty has been getting the results in, even if it's not the most popular. Will we see people pivot to Awakened Dynasty? Honestly, I'm going to say no. I'm not going to speculate. I'm going to say no. I think no matter how well Awakened Dynasty does, people are just too invested. They're too obsessed with suckling on the metallic teat, suckling the oil out of the Hypercrypt's nipple. Grey Knights. It is same shit, different day for the Grey Knights. We are seeing Grey Knights, another week with a 50+% win rate. Another week with a lot of people going 4-1. Another week with them having a very stable number of players. There's nothing really new to write home about Grey Knights. The one thing to mention is that I'm seeing I'm seeing more people take Grey Knight Terminators. I still think it's all about the Dread Knights, and I still think that any Grey Knight list worth their salt isn't going to leave home without 3 or 4 of the bastards. But Grey Knight Terminator is something that a lot of people had dismissed, seem to be making a bit of a comeback, and that potentially bodes very well for the new Agents of Imperium stuff as well. So there we go. So it's all about Dread Knights, but keep an eye on them Terminators. Big block of 10 of them led by Drago. It's expensive, but it fucks. Chaos Knights. Everything I said about Imperial Knights basically applies here. Okay numbers, people going 4-1, hovering around 51% win rate, but no one winning any tournaments. Chaos Knights and Imperial Knights, they do things very distinctively, they do things quite differently, but fundamentally they're both stat checks, and fundamentally right now they are both gatekeepers. Space Wolves, 52% win rate this week. Little bit low for Space Wolf players traditionally, although it is a quieter week, so it could be a bit of an anomalous result. We have seen, what's interesting about Space Wolves is we've seen a lot of people jumping on the Champions of Rust attachment over the traditionally very strong Stormlands attachment. And it seems, I don't mean to alarm you gentlemen, but for the first time that I can remember, bear in mind I can't remember anything that happens yesterday, but for the first time in my memory, Champions of Rust not only had more players than Stormlands, also had more results. Not a higher win rate. Technically, Stormlands had a 56% win rate and instead of 50% win rate. They did have 2 people go 4-1, and no one went 4-1 with Stormlands. It seems like Stormlands is the 3-2 faction. Champions of Rust appears to be the inheritors of the Space Wolf meta. And all I can say is thank fuck, because I was sick of facing Stormlands, frankly. Fucking sick. Jesus, please. I don't even care if it's the same fucking list. Just give me something other than Stormlands for a change, man. Maybe that's what a lot of Space Wolf players are feeling like as well, you know. Maybe they're like, fucking sick of Stormlands, we're just going to run Champions of Rush just for the hell of it, just to get some results in, just to get something a bit different. I get that, and I respect that. It's the Chaos Space Marines. For a lot of people, including myself, the potential inheritors of the new meta, and we and Chaos Space Marines have had another very good week, making it into the top 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Chaos Space, we're in the top 8 now, boys, on the final stretch. Chaos Space Marines making it into the top 8 again. 50+% win rate again. High player numbers again. Sizable number of people going 4-1 again. Chaos Space Marines are on the warpath right now. They are slapping people. They're pulling their dicks out. They're cocks at people. They're rubbing their nuts in their faces. They're just, to be less crude, doing the work and getting the results. Now, we're speaking of those results, for another week in a row, the second week in a row, Chaos Cult is the undisputed top performing faction. Okay, like, we saw them win a tournament last week. They didn't win a tournament this week, but they did go 4-1. Second week in a row. Last week they had a 100% win rate. This week they've got an 8% win rate. It is now, in my opinion, undisputed that Chaos Cult is the most powerful detachment for Chaos, which is fucking incredible. Because that it's like, even if they're traitorous, it's still the common man that is winning is winning the battles and winning the wars for in 40k. I love it, man. And so Chaos Cult, it's not very popular. It's like one dude, this basically Chaos Cult guy going around filling everyone in with his fucking mutant blobs. But it's got a very, very high win rate. The reason it's not very popular is because it requires a lot of models, and most people can't be fucked painting up hundreds of mutants and hundreds of cultists for a niche army that's probably going to get nerfed, you know, like Unending Swarm and stuff. The most popular attachment remains to be Renegade Raiders, 55% win rate, 3 people going 4-1, and 20 players. Renegade Raiders is kind of like Invasion Fleet or Shield Host. It's comfy, gets results, it goes 4-1. Occasionally someone wins torn with it, but basically most people are taking it because they're happy to come away with 3-2, 4-1, which they can absolutely achieve with this attachment. It's not the most powerful, but with basically 40 to 60 infantry and 4 to 6 vehicles, you have yourself a very, very powerful army. The vast majority of those vehicles are just normal ones, ones that Chaos Space Marines have, like Rhinos and Predators and Vindicators. And the vast majority of infantry is Legionnaires or other power armored kind of guys, like Chosen, Legionnaires, you know, that kind of stuff. And so it's a relatively quick army. It's relatively to build and paint. It's a relatively cheap army to build. You don't have to have the latest models. You can just buy a whole bunch of secondhand Chaos Space Marine shit. Renegade Raiders is popular because it produces results, and it feels like for the first time in living memory that dudes in power armor are actually meaningful for Chaos Space Marines. I cannot tell you, edition after edition after edition, it was always a bit of a meme that Chaos Space Marine armies never feature Chaos Space Marines. And now we're seeing one of the best ways to run them, featuring goddamn Legionnaires. Personally, I'm all for that. And whilst it might be a bit basic bitch going Renegade Raiders, it's great to see actual goddamn Chaos Space Marines in a goddamn Chaos Space Marine army just getting results. And that's good. Part Battle Zealots, bubbling under the surface. It's I mentioned this about a month ago. I spoke to a very experienced Chaos Space Marine player after a tournament. We went and got some victory chicken together, and he explained to me that he thinks that Pat Bound Zealots is still the best, is actually the best attachment. It's just kind of being slept on at the moment. It's one that he's been going to, and he's been consistently going 4-1 at the tournaments he's been going to, and that has been something that has been reflected in the data. Pat Bound Zealots have been bubbling away, simmering away. Deceptors, oh my god. Praise be. Look at this beautiful baby. Deceptors didn't have a 20% win rate. That's it. Deceptor meta incoming. Joking aside, moving aside, it's great to see Deceptors actually get, you know, a couple of players playing with them. And hell, you know, they only won 4 out of 10 games, and they both went 2-3 Maybe someone went 3-2, and someone went 1 and what would it be, 3-2, and someone went 1-4. But fuck it, 2 mad lads took the Alpha Legion, and they came away with the heads held high. Soulforge Warp Pack, it's just not getting the results. Unfortunately, it seems like it doesn't affect enough units for it to be viable. And then we have Dread Talons. Hey! Now, it's interesting here. We had one dude taking Dread Talons. Warpforge, was this you? Because normally, JCMS Meta Monday doesn't cover RTTs. But there was one guy who went 1-3 at a tournament. Warforge, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. Oh my god. It's not mine, sir. So interesting that JCMS included this, as this does appear to be like RTT data. Maybe some dude was only able to go to the first day of a tournament. I don't know. But Dread Talons having a 33% win rate. Night Lord players, Night Lord players still crying. But Warforge, I'm still waiting, buddy. I still believe, I still have faith. You are going to be the man that turns this franchise around. You're going to be the man that takes Dread Talons to a tournament and goes 3-2 or goes 4-1 with them. I believe, man. I believe you can do it. The Jaeger Bomb meta is coming, and you are going to be at the helm of that meta, man. I love it. All right. Let's have a look next at Dark Angels. And by Dark Angels, I mean every single Space Marine player that is actually running Gladius Task Force and isn't for some reason clinging to basic Space Marines. Let's just look at this right. 52% win rate for Dark Angels. 6 players going 4-1 or better. 2 people winning tournaments. 24 players. Over half of those players winning Gladius. 5 out of 6 people who went 4-1 were running Gladius Task Force. And the 2 tournament wins that Dark Angels got this week were with Gladius Task Force. If you are running Space Marines right now and you want to run Gladius, you're playing Dark Angels. It's just that simple. I have to say, what I found really interesting about Dark Angels this edition is the traditionally cool, interesting, and powerful builds that they have, like Ravenwing and Deathwing, have been kind of shite for the whole edition. They're getting some life back into them, as you can see with Inner Circle Task Force here, managing to get 4-1 and a few extra players and a 41% win rate, don't get me wrong. But for the vast majority of 10th edition so far, Deathwing has been shite, Ravenwing has been shite, and various forms of Green Wing have been really good. AKA, we've had for example, we've had Ironstorm, that's basically Green Wing tanks, and now we've got Gladius, which is basically Green Wing again. So it seems like 10th edition is not the Deathwing meta or the Ravenwing meta. It seems like Green Wing is the often maligned and forgotten, and often the least sexy, but arguably the most important part of the Dark Angels chapter. It does make up the vast majority of the Dark Angels in lore for that chapter. So it seems like 10th edition is the edition of Dark Angels Green Wing, because it seems consistently to be in various forms as performing. But long story short, if you're taking Space Marines, don't take basic Space Marines. Pretend the Dark Angels, take Dark Angels and Gladius, and actually fucking win tournaments. Now let's look at the tournaments that they've won here. 53 player, 6-round GT in Mexico. And then a major. Dark Angels winning a major. Gladius Task Force, 105 players, 5 rounds, going 5-0. There you go, man. Dark Angels, as been said for a couple of weeks, Dark Angels Gladius is very, very powerful, potentially even broken. Dark Angels Task Force just won the biggest event of the weekend. There you are. Let's do AdMech, and then we can cover the top 5 in a moment. So, Adeptus Mechanicus, the inferior faction with the acronym AM, doing quite well though. 52% win rate, but a quiet week for Adeptus Mechanicus. Single-digit player numbers shows that it's still a pretty small faction. Most factions are able to get double digits even on a quiet week. Not AdMech. So pretty small player numbers, a very respectable win rate, but and two out of 9 people managing to go 4-1, but no tournament wins. Weirdly, Radzone Core had a very, very good weekend. Now, Radzone Core, Cohort Cybernetica, Datestorm Conclave, they all normally play second fiddle to Skitarii Hunter Cohort. Normally, it is Skitarii Hunter Cohort smashing it every single week for the AdMech. This week, it didn't even have the majority of the players, and it had one of the lower win rates, so 47% win rate. Is this the beginning of a new AdMech meta, or is this simply a blip in the ghost machine? Guess we'll have to wait till next week to find out. My money is next week's Skitarii Hunter Cohort will be on top. Again, if it's not though, maybe it's time to start digging into the Rad Zone and seeing what it's doing differently. So a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one, but not one that I'm going to immediately put a lot of faith behind until it does it 2 weeks in a row. So Guard were 5th in the meta, 53% win rate, 7 players out of 22. That's almost 33%. That's about 30% of our players. A third of all Guard players who went to tournaments this weekend went 4-1 or better. And we also had a tournament win as well. So we won a 29-player 5-round GT. A very normal local meta style, local size GT. And we just absolutely smashed it, boys. We absolutely smashed it. And this is something that I've been saying. I've been saying this since that new Data Slate dropped. I've been saying that the moment GW gave us back easy access to lethal hits and combine that with cheap tanks, you could just get so much armor into a Guard list. You can have artillery, you can have mechanized, you can have tanks, and it's just so good. And I just can't express enough like the levels of vindication that I think we as a community, as the Mordian Glory community, are sort of feeling right now. Because when this update first dropped, so many communities on like Facebook, on like Reddit, especially, I would say maybe there were some Guard players out there that felt like this was a bit like a big nerf, but there were definitely a lot of non-Guard players out there who were saying like, yeah, they think Guard's like a 20%, 30%. Like a lot of people were saying we're going to go below 40%. We'll be like a 30% win rate. There are even some real doomsayers being like 20% win rate and all that kind of good stuff. And it turns out that no, like our initial hot takes on this balanced data slate were right. You give Guard access, cheap armor, in addition, that is literally all about fucking armor, and they're going to do well. You give Guard not access only to possibly the most efficient armor in the game right now, but then give them access to defeating other people's vehicles and monsters. So not only do we have like the best vehicles in the vehicle meta, not only do we have the best transport in #mech-up, but also we have the best counter to everyone else's vehicles and everyone else's mechanized and monsters, because we get lethal hits against all that kind of stuff. Guard is in a very, very strong position right now, and Guard has been in a strong position for a little while. We were doing very well before this update. We were doing very well since the beginning of 10th edition. We've been doing very well since the beginning. Since the last update, and very well with this update, and I think the problem that GW has on their hands right now, I guarantee you, next week or the week after, We are going to see the guard player numbers go up, and we are going to see the guard win rate go down. Because more so than any other faction out there, and this is true for a lot of factions, but I maintain that guard, it suffers from this more than anything else. We're a very experienced-based faction. You have to lose your first 10 games. Okay? You have to lose your first 10 games. Like MB Bros was saying before, how he got absolutely smashed at his first GT, when got smashed 5 games in a row. MB Bros, that's all part of the process. As guard, a lot of people, a lot of competitive players, a lot of Warhammer coaches, a lot of people will say you've got to get your reps in. I think with guard, there is an extra layer to this. It's not you've got to get your reps in. I think that's true, but it's more of you got to take your licks. You got to get your licks in. It's not about getting your reps in and getting practice and honing your strategy. With guard, you have got to take your fucking beatings. You've got to take your beatings like a man, or like a guardsman even, or like a guardswoman. Okay, but you've got to take your beatings. And you are going to play your first 10 games, and you're going to go to your first few tournaments, and you're probably going to get your fucking asshole restructured. You are probably going to fail your anal circumference check. You are probably going to get filled in, turned out, and bummed. Okay, it's just going to happen. But that is part of the process. And I think for GW, it's kind of a bit of a conundrum. It's a bit of a paradox. Because and GW has shown, they don't always get it right, but they've shown quite a remarkable ability. I think with the good balance team they've got in place right now, they have shown the ability to do nuance. They have shown that they are actually aware of what's going on in their game. And I think right now, for GW, there's probably a little bit of a conundrum here where they have to balance guard at the top level, but not completely fuck people who are going through that initial process and completely put the middle players off. It's a really, really delicate balance. And right now, I think, what we're seeing here is, I think it's important to understand it is a quieter week. Votan tends to do worse on quieter weeks. Guard tends to do better on quieter weeks. So it's important not to, get overly excited. We get a little excited. It's important not to get overly excited from 1 week's worth of data. But I think that this is not the first time we've been through this story. This is not the first. How many Meta Mondays have we seen where it's like guard on the warpath, guard win rate falls, guard win rate rises, right? This isn't not a coincidence that we go through this cycle of boom and bust. This is what happens. People hear guard are good. They jump on that guard bandwagon. Then the win rate fucking falls because those people have to take their beatings. And then a lot of people bow out of the faction competitively. But the people that stick around become part of a hardened veteran cadre of players. If they choose to stick around. Some people just won't. Some people are like, fuck it. This is just not for me. I don't like the playstyle. Even if I can see what's good, I don't like the playstyle. I don't like, and that's totally okay. Not every player is going to enjoy a playstyle. Like, I don't personally enjoy really playing Marines. But a lot of people do, So I think what guard is going through right now is we're going through a win rate boom. But I wouldn't be surprised if next week we go through a player boom, but a win rate. That's what's going to happen. So it's great to see the potential guard has, and it's great to see how consistently we have been delivering this. Let's take a step back for a second. Okay? Let's take a step back and let's look long term. Let's look since the beginning of 10th edition. Okay. Now, guard, since the beginning of this edition, has not had the highest win rate, and we've not had the most tournament wins or anything like that. There have been other factions which have come and gone. We've had the Dawn of the Eldar. We have had the domination of the Necrons. you know, and you know, more recently we have seen factions like Thousand Suns, you know, bare their fangs and Sister Battle. Other factions have come and gone. Other factions have had their time in the sun, and they've had, and many of them are now having their time in Hades. But throughout all of this, the Guard has just been steady. We've had that 45 to 50% win rate. Sometimes it goes a little bit lower than that. Sometimes we go down to 42%. Sometimes we go to 53%. But we've always been in that fucking zone, in the fucking pocket. Okay? And we've always, week in, week out, meta in, meta out, season in, season out, Guard has had fucking performance. We've had fucking things to be proud of. Not a week goes by. No, you go down this fucking list, boys. You go down this fucking list, and there'll be factions. Let's go down near the bottom. There'll be factions where like no one, or like maybe like, you know, like what, like literally fucking no one. For orcs, no one went 4-1, 0, zilch. Not a single player managed to go 4-1 with this fucking faction. Okay, and then you've got like Guard. And you've got, you know, week after week where factions will have like some people going 4-1, but no one's winning a tournament with them. And with Guard, where, you know, occasionally we win something big. But what's really impressive, what I think means more, you know, the occasional winning big, that's like, for me, it's not the heats that matter, it's the final. It's not the battles, it's the war. And for me, I think what really shows off the strength of the Guard is I cannot remember a week, or at the very, very least 2 weeks in a row, like a 2-week period, where Guard hasn't had a significant portion of players going 4-1, where we haven't had a tournament win. There are some factions which have literally gone months without a tournament win. Months. I can't point to a single month. Like I said, I can't remember a single 2-week period where Guard hasn't won a cheeky GT here. Hasn't done, you know, hasn't got into the top 8 of a fucking major or super major there. Like Guard just, we have these booms and busts of like win rates and players, but the thing that's really telling, the thing that is showing how solid our core is, our infantry core, how solid our core is, our tank core is, our infantry core is, our artillery core is, what's really showing the solidness of the foundation of this fucking faction is every week we pull down consistent results. Consistent fucking 4-1s, consistent tournament wins. And I personally believe, and I've been saying this since day one, since the Guard Index was released, the number one reason for this, the number one thing that has given Guard ability to be so steady is the datasheets. There are so few bad Guard datasheets. Some are just internally bad, but relatively to the wider picture, there's so few bad ones. Like the one bad unit you can fucking pick out of the lot is probably the Minotaur Priest. That's it. But every other datasheet, okay, and the Wyvern, and the Wyvern, okay? But it's not like generally, it's not blowing anyone away, it's just not shit. That's what I think defines the Guard. 90+% of our datasheets in our main index are just not shit. They're just good or better. And our army rule was wank for a long time. And our orders are one of the... Our detachment rule was kind of wank for a long time, and our army rule is one of the only ones that can be actively countered by battle shock, like a fucking joke of a mechanic. Despite that, despite all of the points changes and the ups and downs and the wildies and the woosies and the spinning in fucking circles, the one thing that has been an anchor for us this edition is the datasheets. That's the biggie. That's the that is the magic fucking number right there. I don't know what magic fucking number means, but you know what I mean. That's number wang, all right? That's the key. The whole thing. Since day one, we've had good data sheets. That's the biggie. Sometimes our points have been good. Sometimes our points have been bad. Sometimes our detachment rule has been good. Sometimes our detachment rule has been bad. The number one thing is the data sheets. If I was to round this whole thing off with one reason why I think Guard has been able to consistently perform at a very acceptable level, it feels like the army works with the player. That's the summary, boys. That's the summary. So, am I getting all uppity and excited and maybe massively blowing out proportion of fucking top 5, 53%? Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I can accept that. But inside that, there are some very key insights and some very key points that I'm trying to get across. And I hope that I've been able to do that. So yeah, Guard making it into the top fucking 5. You know what, boys? Every day in the Guard, it's like a day on the farm. Every paycheck a fortune, every meal a banquet, every formation a parade. I love the Guard. There we are, man. There you are. This is vindication. There we go, boys. Gentlemen, to the Guard. So, shall we get into the top 4 here? Black Templars, 55% win rate. They had 5 people go 4-1, but no one winning any events. 16 players is really, really good numbers for Black Templars. It's interesting how last week we had a busier week, and yet there were about 16 Black Templar players. And this week it's a quiet week, and there's still 16 Black Templar players. They have a really, really solid number of players, man. Black Templars will always turn up, always representing, always doing a good job. Never too many of them, never too few of them. In terms of, there's not really anything new to write home about with Black Templars. Again, the vast majority of people are running Righteous Crusade, whether it's the most powerful detachment or not. Some people are experimenting with Gladius, and occasion, and it's still, and 1 or 2 people are getting good results with other detachments. But Black Templars, same shit, different day. Steady number of players, vast majority of them going down the Black Templars detachment. Here's a fucking blast from the recent past. Eldar in the top 3. You guys have been saying it. The Knife Ears need another round of nerfs, and clearly they do. No, I actually think this is a blip. Basically, as you can see, the Eldar have got a good win rate with that 56% win rate, and they've got 5 and about 30% of their players went 4-1, but no one won any tournaments. Eldar Eldar and Black Templars in a similar boat. Decent player numbers, solid performance each week, but rarely winning any tournaments. Occasionally they win something big. Most of the time they're just winning games, but they're not winning. They're winning battles. They're not winning wars. Thousand Sons, the true inheritors of the meta, and we're really starting to see them break out. Solid player numbers again. 59% win rate is truly eye-watering. Another week where Thousand Sons get shitloads of 4-1, and they even won a tournament this week. What did they win? I bet it's just a decently sized event. 36 players, 5 rounds, Thousand Sons, 5-0. There you go. Thousand Sons, in my opinion, are one of the most powerful factions right now. Magnus is a beast. He will double Doombolt everything off the table. 1 unit a turn every turn. He will then destroy a unit every turn. Magnus basically kills 3 units a turn. He double Doombolts 1. He uses his ranged weapons on 1. And he charges 1. Bang, bang, bang. And he basically destroys 2 to 3 units a turn every turn. Mutilated Vortex Beasts are really annoyingly hard to kill and can punch surprisingly hard. And then you've got the Rubrics, which are just solid MEQ infantry. Yeah, Thousand Sons, another week where they're in the top 3. Thousand Sons a bit, you know how a Guard have been like this, have been in a good position since the beginning of the edition? Thousand Sons have basically been in the same. They even got really badly nerfed on like Overwatch and stuff like that, and it didn't make a blind bit difference. Yeah. I think Thousand Sons are one of, if not, the new top faction. And they have been for a while. There's not much new to say about them. It's just another week where we're seeing them up here. And then we have the hot topic. The Drukari. Dark Elder. Sky Splinter Assault. 65% win rate. This win rate, 65% win rate, 7 people, that's almost half of them, almost 50% of the players that ran Dark Elder this weekend at tournaments went 4-1, and 3 of them went undefeated and actually won tournaments. What do they win? They run a 32-player 5-round GT. They won a 38-player 5-round GT, and they won a 51-player 5-round GT. So from small to medium-sized GTs, Drukhari did very well. And 16 players is it's up there. It's with like Thousand Suns, like Eldar, Black Templars. It's up there in terms of player numbers. Now, it absolutely is a quieter week. It absolutely is potentially like an exaggerated or anomalous result, but I don't think so. I'm not saying Dark Elder are necessarily going to be on top next week. They very well may be, but they're going to be in the top. They're going to be a top 8 again. They're probably going to be in the top 8 for a while until the next balanced data slate comes out, because they just play Pariah Nexus so damn well. Sky Splinter Assault was very, very good, and it fixed their Leviathan problems, but I think GW now needs to do... I think GW needs to probably release an update to Sky Splinter or a new detachment. It'd be kind of interesting if Dark Elder each season get like a new detachment. And if they do like heavily nerf Skies, it'd be interesting if they got like Sky Splinter taken away and a new detachment brought out, which does something a little bit different, which is tailored towards being balanced in the new season. Right now, I think the problem is that Sky Splinter was designed as a fix for Leviathan, and it worked, and it was good, and people praised it, and they praised the designers of it. Problem is now Sky Splinter Assault is not designed for Pariah Nexus, and it is overperforming. Games Workshop can either nerf Sky Splinter Assault or correct it, or they could embrace a bit of an interesting idea, and they could be like, new detachment per season. We're gonna each Dark Elder. We're gonna tailor you a new detachment for the season. Sky Splinter Assault might go away, might completely go away. Get rid of it, and here's your new Pariah Next detachment. That would be very different, but I actually kind of like that idea. But I suspect GW will probably just nerf a bunch of points like that. But GW's been pretty good at coming up with abstract and unique and bespoke solutions for a lot of problems. We've seen it multiple times. Death Guard, Votan. We've seen it with guards. Seen it with Admech. We've seen them do some well thought out and clever solutions, and they've not just been pulling the points lever every time. But we'll see. Now that covers our data for this weekend. All right. Oh my days, gentlemen! Thank you for all of your support. Thank you for being mega bosses. Thank you for being patient with me, my stupid brain. And of course, as always, reject the meta. Embrace the guard. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian Glory Hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the Call of Duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.